You cannot train artists just on the technical skills required for them to make the work, nor can you just train them on the conceptual skills required to think of the art.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm great. How about you?
Well, it's been an interesting year.
To say the least.
Yeah. What can I say? I've always had a flair for the dramatic.
Me too. Hence the art.
There you go.
Well,
Nice to see you.
You too. You too. Thanks so much for joining me. I really wanted people to just know what a wonderful educator you are,
Oh, well, thank you.
innovator, and build a conversation around the contrast of academia
Mhm.
and what the world really needs. And I think there needs to be a balance of creativity as well. What do you think?
Well, you and I've had conversations around these topics before, and so you know how I feel, but for the benefit of this conversation, I'll make some points that I've made in the past with you for the benefit of your audience. And that is, you know, the very definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results.
Mm.
And I think we're getting to that inflection point in higher education where we really do need to think about doing things differently. That said, we also need to think about doing it with integrity and doing it in a way that serves audiences equitably.
Mm.
And so I think it's a balance that we have to find in terms of the kinds of programming that we offer, the formatting that we use to offer it within the purpose that it serves, and how it benefits the communities that we're connected to. And I think as I was sort of wrapping up my time at the Art Institute of Atlanta, I talked to you about the idea that we create Atlanta's Creative Village, which would have been sort of a nexus point for a lot of opportunities to connect students who had a lot of passion for creativity with tools and technologies, and more importantly, employers that might see their ability to use those and provide them with opportunities or pathways to careers. And I avoid using the word jobs because I like to think long term about what does it take to build a pathway to a successful career. And that is something that, regardless of how you want to think about the way the world works today, you still need to create within the student who is experiencing the educational process this tolerance for ambiguity, this ability to be adaptable, or a word that I like to use is protean, which just means capable of taking on new challenges and just folding them into their workflow. The other issue that I saw when I was at the Art Institute of Atlanta, given that it's a predominantly Black institution, or it was a predominantly Black institution, is how do you create pathways for students that are culturally sensitive, that speak to what's valued to them and their culture, rather than making assumptions about what is the dominant culture and we're going to make a straight line for that. Can we be more nuanced in our approach to maybe find some unexpected gems, by just doing a little digging, a little investigation into what matters to the students? Because if you can do that, again, this is the exciting part for me as an educator. If you can connect to students at that level, everything else becomes immediately relevant to them. Doesn't matter what else you have them do within the context of that academic program. If you point the way to something that's culturally relevant to them, then the entire experience becomes relevant too. Yeah. And so those are the kinds of things that I was working on when I was at AI Atlanta, and those are the things that still kind of make me excited about being in the space that I'm in right now. Right now, I'm at San Antonio College as the chair of the arts department here, and looking for opportunities to again, engage the community. That's the first thing that I started doing when I got here is figuring out who am I serving and what level of support are they looking for? Is it workforce development? Are they looking for a 2-year transfer degree? Are they looking for a very specific 2-year credential, or are they gearing up for something more? Um, and until you have those conversations within the context of the community that you serve, you're really just an administrator taking up space and sucking up a payroll and doing other things.
Yeah.
I can't do that. I have to be at least useful, and so that's where I focus most of my energy.
Well, I have to tell you, I really connected with you not only as an administrator, but as a leader and just genuinely as a person, because I felt like finally I have run into um, an administrator that really understands what's needed now. And you understood the gamut of needing flexibility, you know, of needing to teach in a way that's flexible as well. And I believe that your program, which I was so excited about, this entrepreneurial incubator um, opportunity for not only students but also for graduates, and then a great way to connect the business community, I thought was brilliant. I still think it's brilliant.
This,
Could you talk a little bit about that?
well, this was the exciting thing for me about the concept behind Atlanta's Creative Village, is that you had this sort of perfect, opportunity with a really robust creative community that was there already. Atlanta has you know come leaps and bounds since when I first lived there back in the late '80s. And coming back to Atlanta, seeing that opportunity was just uh, fantastic for me. And then you have this sort of ready-made space available, in part because of the contraction of the enrollment at the Art Institute of Atlanta. So you have the entire third floor basically. If you reconfigured a few things, you could basically take an entire floor of the building and convert it into this incubator makerspace. And then as I started talking to folks that I was bringing in for the career fairs and other things that I was doing to connect students to potential employment opportunities, there was the real interest in investing hard dollars in the kind of technology that would make a makerspace kind of sexy and exciting. Everything from standard stuff, 3D printers and laser cutters, to what is the next generation of virtual reality or augmented reality like, and how can we play in that sandbox? And then just within the last year, of course, AI has exploded. And so, what kind of opportunities with AI would there have been had the Atlantis Creative Village taken off? Um, and I just have to say something really quick here.
Mhm.
Uh, this does not have to go away. This concept wasn't really dependent on me. I just provided a vision for it, articulated some of what was already there. And we were partnering with some outside entities that provided some consulting support for me in terms of how that was articulated. But Atlanta's Creative Village can still exist. It just needs a home. And so, my enthusiasm for the project hasn't diminished one bit just because the Art Institute of Atlanta went away. It just means we'll have to find some other place for it to live and some other structure under which it can exist.
Yes, yes. And I also love the fact that you were implementing a business leg to the Art Institute, which was sorely needed because we're, graduating students with no real understanding. And that's not just at the Art Institute, but no real understanding about how to market themselves and how to push forward their creative projects, which in many cases already existed. They were just coming to us for more information and for the mentorship and the academic element, but the creativity, the ideas, the talent pretty much already existed. I think it's, like you said, needed more now than ever. What made you think that the Art Institute was the perfect place for the business leg that you were trying to implement before it became
Yeah.
different?
Let's be clear. There's a story I've shared, and sometimes I forget with whom I've shared it. I'll go ahead and share it here again for the benefit of your audience.
Okay.
So when I was in undergraduate school, I started off as a music major, and then I moved into fine arts as a major because the music program at the University of South Alabama was mostly focused on music education and not on performance. And so I changed my major to fine arts. And then I started dating this girl who said I was never going to make any money as an artist. And I was so in love with her that I changed my major to business. And I was a business major for a year and a half at the University of South Alabama. And she broke up with me, and I immediately went back to fine arts. But none of that time or those courses was wasted. And I have found that I use everything from marketing to finance to accounting, all kinds of basic business practices in my studio practice as an artist, but also in my everyday work as an administrator here at an arts program at a comprehensive college.
Mhm.
So nothing is ever wasted. And with that in mind, with most of the schools that I've worked for over the last 20 years, I've thought about some level of business programming belongs in the arts. You cannot train artists just on the technical skills required for them to make the work, nor can you just train them on the conceptual skills required to think of the art. You also have to pair that with the kinds of entrepreneurial thinking that is going to be required for them to be successful to manage their own careers. Or if they're going to be working in design fields, you've got to protect them with the knowledge that the ideas that they come up with have some intellectual property value. And so they're not squandering their ideas on other people's projects, and instead they're taking power, taking control of their own destiny by learning how to leverage their creativity in a way that benefits them instead of somebody else. When I got to the Art Institute of Atlanta, I recast a lot of what I'd done at Ringling College of Art and Design and what I'd done at Columbus College of Art and Design by beginning to build, working with the faculty, a curriculum that could legitimately nest within the existing program such that a student could earn a minor in business while they were earning their bachelor's degree. And I think, the special resonance that it had for me at the Art Institute of Atlanta was directly associated with the fact that we were a predominantly Black institution. And a lot of our students were going to be the kinds of students that could potentially be victimized. They had great ideas, they were extraordinarily creative, but they didn't know anything about business. And so their creative capital was at risk of being stolen or appropriated or literally taken by other people. And so just giving them some basic common sense about, what's involved in writing a contract, how do you register a trademark, what do you do when you come up with an idea that is conceivably patentable. All of these kinds of things, are about protecting what's theirs. And then, talking about marketing themselves. You can market yourselves at multiple levels within your career as a starting artist. How do you get out there and, talk to people? Soft skills. How do you create a website or a business card or a web presence on social media? Then you get into the next level. How is it that you do a product launch? How do you create some energy or buzz behind your product? And how do you manage inventories? And then, what do you get into with legal issues that are associated with, threats to your intellectual property. How do you protect what's in your domain? All of these things are really, really important to me. I had to learn those lessons the hard way because the undergraduate program that I went through in art didn't have any of that business content in it. I only incidentally got it because of the situation I told you about, where I changed my major to business for about a year and a half. And I was extremely lucky. A student shouldn't have to rely on luck. That should be a given. You're given the kinds of skills that you need in order to be successful and actually use the degree that you earn.
Yes, absolutely. I have to tell you, I was absolutely thrilled to have to work under you. You know, there are people who, and I think you may agree with this, people that you will work for and people who you will work with. And those that you work for are strong leaders. And you know that they have such a um, transformative way of dealing with not only their um, you know team, but also to lead them in a way that's going to be just gratifying for everyone on that team. And you are one of those people. So I would work under you any day. I can't say that for everybody.
I had some good mentors myself. I honestly, and to the extent that they gave me the same kinds of opportunities
Mhm.
we're describing,
Yeah.
is the same extent to which I'd happily work with them any day. The first person that springs to mind was Denny Griffith. He was the president of Columbus College of Art and Design. He hired me on as his provost there back in, oh gosh, that was 2011, I think. I can't remember. It's been a while. But, he was, and I try to emulate this. He was very gracious about giving credit away. So when you work in a team and you're the leader, it's not about you. It's about what you can do to lift up the various people within the team to make sure that they're performing at a level that's going to benefit the entire team and achieve the objectives. My my goal in most of the projects that I work on is to set that vision. To kind of figure out what within the sort of scope of everything that we're doing is the most important thing to be pursuing and to stay focused on that. That's not to ignore the opportunities that might bubble up later. But there's, all kinds of ways that you can solve a problem. So you have to think abductively sometimes, nonlinear associative ways of thinking about how to solve a problem. And sometimes it's just a straight line. Um, Another leader that I work with, and you'll appreciate this, a gentleman named David Kosh. On the air, he was known as Bob Cummings. He was my program director when I was at Point 102.5 in Tampa. And I was his music director and assistant program director for many years there. And we did a great job in the 25 to 49 demographic, particularly with men, but not too shabby with women either. But he was one of those leaders that gave me a tremendous amount of latitude within my area of expertise. I knew music backwards and forwards, going all the way back to the early 60s because of all the experience at various radio formats over the years. And so I could program, a day's worth of music pretty easily and make it sound interesting and exciting. And he gave me all of the latitude I needed to put that program together. But he was also very helpful in terms of understanding the politics of radio. I was relatively new in an administrative role as his music director. I'd never dealt with people in traffic. I'd never dealt with, folks in sales. I'd never dealt with any of the other stuff that's associated with working in radio. I'd just been an announcer before. So he was the kind of person that would take me by the hand and let me do the things that were fun to me, that kept me motivated, excited, and engaged. But he also, along the way, introduced me to some of the issues that I needed to deal with in my role as an administrator for the station. And I think that combination of encouragement and incentivization and kind of fair warning and strong guidance is really valuable. So I try to emulate that. I don't ever want to be unclear with what it is I'm going for or what it is I'm trying to do. I don't want to create confusion within the team. So it's always important for me to find a way to say it as clearly as possible. And so, for example, going back to the Art Institute of Atlanta, who are we serving? We're serving a predominantly Black audience. They're extremely creative. They're extremely motivated, but they don't have the tools or the resources. So we have to find a way to clear the path for them and get them the tools and resources that they need so that they can be successful. Ultimately, if you do that and repeat, 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 you have alumni out there that are speaking well of you. You have successful students who got jobs who speak to the value of their experience at the Art Institute of Atlanta, and you've solved your enrollment problem almost automatically because everybody buys into the idea that there's your case study, there is your history, there is your evidence, your portfolio, if you will, of students who are out there doing great things because of the investment you made.
I'm just shaking my head because it seems just, it's a no-brainer, but it's like fighting tooth and nail to get others, higher ups, to agree with you and flow with you. I did notice a lot of resistance, and I don't understand that. Can you, without saying more than you want to, speak to that? Why is there so much resistance with higher ups to flow in a way that's more expansive for academia?
Well, there are any number of layers of issues, um, that can get in the way, um, and some of them are habits of practice. We've always done it this way. Some of them are habits of mind. I can't think of any other way to do it. Um, and some of them are just resistance because of fear of change. I don't know what to do. I'm scared. I don't want to try that. Right.
Mhm.
And those barriers, while they might sound easy to say and commonsensical in the context of this conversation, they permeate themselves in interesting ways in various levels of higher education administration. Um, and unfortunately, a lot of it's tied to budget and domains and power centers and control and other things. One of the things that I've found in my various experiences at different schools is that a lot of folks, really respond well to some of the concepts that are articulated in a change management plan, until it impacts what it is that they do themselves personally. And then all of a sudden, you run into some resistance that maybe you hadn't anticipated. Well, if everybody else is changing, but I get to stay the same, that's cool. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing, and everybody else will make changes to accommodate this vision. Everything's fine.
Mhm.
But it doesn't work that way. Sometimes being a change agent, and I do consider myself to be a change agent. I've worked some pretty tectonic changes at every institution I've served. I'm doing it right here at San Antonio College. So you have to be able, again, articulate that clear vision, and then you have to be persistent about it. And the first time somebody tells you no, you go, okay, I'll come back and try you again in a couple of weeks. And then you ask again.
Mhm.
Or if you ask them and the answer is still no, then you ask them, well, what would it take for you to say yes? How can you, if you acknowledge the fact that this would be of value, but we can't do it because there's a budgetary constraint or there's a space constraint or there's a time constraint, what can we move within that time, space, finance piece to make this vision possible? And can I help you in accomplishing that? And can I give you credit for working with me as a partner in doing this? If it's to the benefit of the students, if it's to the benefit of the employers that hire our students, if it's to the benefit of the larger community, maybe there's some economic value or economic impact that you can point to. You just have to be persistent in terms of what it is that you're willing to advocate for, what it is you're willing to push for. And then to get back to the original question, in terms of resistance in higher education, a lot of times, I spoke about this in an article once that I wrote about on LinkedIn. A lot of times, institutions make huge investments, capital investments, human resource investments, technology investments that really are sort of planted in this idea that it's going to be at least somewhat durable. You hire a faculty member with a certain expertise, and you hope that that person's going to be around for 10 to 15 to 30 years. But the truth is that discipline expertise obsolesces so quickly anymore unless that faculty member is willing to continuously update their portfolio to remain relevant. You've just created an investment in something that isn't really moving as quickly as it needs to move. The same goes with technology. Let's say you drop a couple $1,000,000 on a mainframe computer that has a processing power that's obsolete within 2 years. Well, you've just spent, a gazillion bucks on something that really isn't going to serve your long-term needs. But yet you've invested in all the software packages that go with that particular computing package. And yet you can't move beyond it because you're kind of financially locked in. And so I don't like the idea that you make these huge investments, especially in such a period of time now that is just so dynamic. There's so much changing that you really run into some logistical and some other kinds of barriers to the kinds of adaptability you need as an institution to make change. And so sometimes you get administrators will literally paint themselves into a corner based on decisions they've made in the past that prevents them from making smarter decisions in the future. I think, the other point I wanted to make real quickly, and I know we're kind of
No, you're fine.
we're going to keep
You're
this
fine.
moving. Sometimes if you have a situation where there is a lot of stress, and we've seen institutions that were under a lot of stress. They tend to revert back to the habits that got them successful in the first place. And if your old habits are no longer relevant in a new marketplace, that stress is actually causing you to go backwards and revert to a model that's no longer sustainable in any shape, way, or form. It wasn't sustainable to the point where it got you where you are right now, and it's certainly not going to be sustainable going forward into the future. But higher education in general is under a tremendous amount of stress now. And it's for a lot of different reasons. There's political reasons, there's demographic reasons, there are, attitudinal reasons. I'll cover each one of those just briefly. We're in
That'll be great.
a demographic trough right now. I don't know if you know this or not, but the number of first-time entering freshmen or first-time in college students is at its lowest level in the last 20 years, and it's going to continue to stay in that trough for a while, another 5 to 10 years before the number of college-age freshmen starts coming up again. And when you have a lot of institutions and a dwindling demographic supply of students who are college eligible, it creates stress and creates competition in a way that's not healthy for the system. And to my point earlier about some institutions reverting back to their old habits, if you're operating in a mode that isn't serving your current needs or isn't serving your prospective future needs, then you're never going to survive in this sort of demographic collapse that we're in right now. Because first of all, the market's too savvy. Social media has changed everything. One bad review, and then you get a pile-on effect, and everybody can drive your our social media ratings through the floor.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen that in some instances. The other impact that higher education is suffering from is this sort of political impact that's tied to it in two ways. One is financial. In other words, the number of dollars available to subsidize students' attendance in higher education has dwindled. And this is a mentality that you can sort of best be described as like no more taxes, or we're going to lower our taxes. If you keep lowering taxes to the point where you can't provide for the public good and the common good that higher education is supposed to provide, then you're going to have those distortions in the marketplace that create, kind of a systemic unfairness in terms of who gets access to those dwindling dollars.
Right.
And, you've seen it already in some of how financial aid is dispersed and how access is given to higher education. It's because those dollars are shrinking. Mm-hmm. And then the other political side of that is that there are a lot of folks out there who are now politically questioning the value of higher education. This is an argument we could have for a whole nother podcast. We could do a whole nother series
yes.
In a podcast about, the politicization of higher education.
Yeah.
But there is a strong sort of anti-intellectual component to it. There's also sort of an economic value, return on investment component to it. And then there's the financial piece that I referred to earlier where, people just don't want to invest in it. It's fine if you can pay for it yourself, but just don't ask our tax dollars to pay for that kind of education. And so, and then the third piece, I talked about demographic, I talked about political, I talked about economic. I want to talk one more point about economic, and that is that, the cost of higher education today is prohibitively expensive, especially if you go to, a private school. And even some publics are getting to be very, very expensive. I'm fortunate now that I work at San Antonio College. We're a community college, so our tuition rates are really very, very inexpensive. And so that's an economic strategy that a lot of our students have adopted here, and they'll spend 2 years here building up their transcript in preparation for transfer to a 4-year school. And that's an intentional strategy on the part of many of our students. And it's a good strategy because, again, the cost of higher education has gotten to the point where, it is out of reach for a lot of people unless they adopt strategies like transfer, or unless they are very fortunate to get scholarships, or unless they're willing to leverage, their savings and their home and everything else in order to get loans to go to school. So it's a challenge, and because of all of those challenges, administrators are in this weird position. They don't want to move one lever too much because it'll tilt the ship this way, and then they move another lever this much and it'll tilt the ship this way. And it's a very delicate balance that everyone is trying to manage.
You have touched on so many significant points. I really appreciate that. And you're such a wealth of knowledge. I always love talking to you. But you're certainly giving the viewer an opportunity to see what it is like from the perspective of the administrator. But you're also painting a very broad picture about all of the components that are involved in order to get us on track or derail us, whichever. I don't even know which direction we're going these days. Where are we going? But are we trying to stay on track, or are we trying to be derailed? Which one is it? I'm just talking about the political climate on that one. But anyway, what is it? What do you think we need to do as parents and students to prepare ourselves for what's next in this unpredictable climate?
Well, I think, somebody once told me that, we're in the arts, we're particularly good at teaching students about the value of living with a certain amount of ambiguity. Um, and I think in general, it's been one of the secrets to my success as a professional is that I've learned how to embrace ambiguity as a way to prompt me to continuously look at the landscape and to continuously assess what needs to happen next. Um, and I think if I were to give advice to a student or their parents about, what's going on right now, there's just a lot of churn out there. This whole higher education, as it aligns with a professional career, as it aligns with the kinds of financial success that most people hope for with the jobs that they choose. It's a very sort of tenuous process, but there's also more information out there than there ever has been before. And you can find it in some really interesting places. Everything from the scorecards that you get on a lot of the publications, the 10 best colleges to attend, blah, 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 or the 100 top colleges to attend. That's all great if you, again, got the resources to go there. But there are other ways that you can sort of suss out, what it is that would be a reasonable path for you to tread and to be successful in the end. And I think that one of the things I would look at is talk to the faculty. Most schools have the faculty listed, and if you can reach out to a couple of the faculty and ask them their opinions about the school, you can, reach out and see if the school has a strong social media presence for its students, student support, student activities. These are incredibly valuable opportunities to keep the students connected, to build a sense of community with the school. If you have, projects that sort of reach out and go beyond the campus itself, both extending into the high school, such as dual credit, dual enrollment opportunities, or internships that go out into the professional workforce. If you look at a school's catalog, go on their website and pull down their catalog and just, pull up the PDF or however it is they have their information archived and search internships. And if you see a whole bunch of internship opportunities, that might be something to look at. Even for schools that don't have high sticker prices, if you're engaging while you're still in school in some sort of professional level experience through an internship or a practicum, that's valuable. Especially if you're in a school, that might not be very big and might not be in a very big community. Atlanta's wonderful. I love Atlanta. I'd move back to Atlanta in a heartbeat. There's all sorts of things to do in Atlanta. There's all sorts of opportunities in Atlanta. And that was the thing that was so exciting about me being at the Art Institute of Atlanta, was looking at opportunities to connect our students to potential career paths, using their education as a means to get their foot in the door. So those are kinds of things that I would encourage parents to look for. What are the internship opportunities? If they're still in high school, is there dual credit opportunities to take advantage of? Are there programs that are happening on campus on the weekends that engage high school students? Is there something happening over the summer that maybe like a camp situation provides an opportunity for students to find out more about a particular major? I have students who come to me and they're just taking a general suite of courses. We refer to it here as the core. And this is all your basic classes, your state required courses like English and psychology, a humanities course, etc. And they're coming to me asking me about, what's it like to be a major in such and such a program? And, I'll give them as much information as I can give them. People generally want to help. So if you can find access to somebody like me at a school that you're interested in, they'll share with you what it's like to be in a particular program. And again, it's easier now than ever because practically everything is out there on the web.
Yes, yes. And I have to take a moment to thank you as well, because it was under your leadership that I developed the Black Women in Radio Ultimate Internship Experience, which just took off as a virtual internship opportunity, and was able to not only have students from the Art Institute, but Howard University and Temple University and Georgia State. So, and it's continuing to grow. So again, under your leadership, I was able to develop something like that. So thank you for that.
Well, I'm so proud of Black women in radio. You and I have that common past in broadcasting.
Yes.
And, I just was so impressed with your work that I knew that getting you interns was going to be a way for you to advance that work and engage those students in something that you were passionate about, and that would have value. The Library of Congress and all of that. That sort of a permanent archive now of the history. Uh, and I would also add a really, until now, underrepresented history of what was happening in radio. So
Yeah.
kudos to you and Black Women in Radio. I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of your work. Um,
Thank you.
I also am proud of the fact that you are one of those faculty that engaged me in the conversations about a business curriculum for the students at the Art Institute of Atlanta. Um, we never got that off the ground for obvious reasons, but you are one of those voices at the table when we were shaping that suite of 5 courses that was ultimately going to be integrated within the bachelor's program as a way to earn a minor in business while they were earning their major in whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of willingness to engage, for me as an administrator, um, I can have this sort of idea about where we want to go and kind of point the way, but I'm not the discipline expert. Uh, you guys basically wrote that curriculum, and I still have it. I've got it on my computer right here.
Good. I'm glad somebody has it. That was a lot of work.
I was proud of it. I just thought it, and I've shared elements of it here at San Antonio College, and so that conversation is starting again with
Good.
Val Albert, who's the chair of the business program here at San Antonio College. And we're not ready to get started yet, but sometime within the next year or so, I'll sit down with a group of faculty in her department and say, this is my idea for what I want to try to do, a business program for non-business majors. How can we instill in our students, regardless of what major they go into, some basic understanding of how the business world works? Because if they're going to be entrepreneurial, and the gig economy is increasingly pointing towards that as a reality, a fact for most of our students now, we need to prepare them to manage themselves in addition to managing their careers and managing their finances and the whole kit and caboodle. You think, managing business is about, the world of high finance and stock market and all that stuff. But business is just basically sitting down at the end of the week and saying, have I made enough money to cover my bills? And then what am I setting aside for a rainy day or retirement or something else? And how do we make all of that work together while we're studying?
Yes. Yes. You don't have to be a starving artist with the right tools. Oh my goodness. Well, again, I will sing all of your praises forever, because my experience, though it was short, with you was just extraordinary, and it opened my eyes to. I was really feeling, hmm, I guess, defeated in a way as a faculty member teaching the same way while the whole world is changing, you know? And with you, it was just a breath of fresh air, you know? It
I,
was progressive.
I appreciate that. Sometimes you feel like you're beating your head against the wall, but other times conversations like this kind of remind you that you're heading in the right direction.
Yes. Much needed, right? Before I let you go, I have to touch on AI and where you think it's headed. I talked about it a little bit at the Library of Congress when we did our conferences. And it's very eye opening. And not only that, it's happening rapidly. So, beginning with the fact that some students are using the AI app to write their papers. And it's akin to, remember, we're both old enough to remember this. Remember when there was this big debate as to whether or not to allow students, and we were students at that time, to use the typewriter or the computer? Oh,
Felèsha, I'm actually
yes,
remember the debate about Cliff Notes and whether or not that was appropriate to allow students to use Cliff Notes.
me too. Yes, 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 yes.
This
So it
is
kind of reminds me of that time. So I'm a lot more open-minded than I was in college with with these debates. So what do you think?
Well, AI is not going anywhere. I think one of the things that we as a group of administrators here at San Antonio College, in conversations with our faculty, have been to look at the various platforms that are out there. And AI is just a broad umbrella term for everything from Chat GPT, which is the one that gets all the attention, to a lot of other AI applications that live in specialty domains, like in photography. There's a whole photo AI, and there's several applications that are out there that can generate images for you. There's music AI applications that can generate musical arrangements and orchestrations for you. And the prompts that you put into these things are getting increasingly sophisticated, so that you're getting more and more sophisticated outputs through the prompting system that you're using. And in some ways, the AI system is training us to give better prompts so that it can generate the outputs in line with what it is that we're expecting. So it's kind of a symbiotic relationship right now. I don't think AI is any better than what it is that we're capable of putting into it. And so what we get out of it isn't really much better than what we could generate on our own. But I do think that there is going to be some kind of tipping point. It's probably here in some disciplines, in some areas of industry, where the output is sufficiently good that it's going to have impact, economic impact, real economic impact on people's lives. And that's where I start getting worried about, what is the value of AI when it starts replacing what would otherwise be somebody's job. And then, what is the value of that job and its loss? What impact will it have on the community at large? And, I struggle not with AI as a concept. AI as a concept is fine. But when you multiply that sort of effect of loss of job, economic consequence over many hundreds, if not thousands, of people within a community, and then you see that the decisions being made to implement AI at a certain level are being made for business purposes to value or add economic value to the bottom line of the company at the cost of a community. In other words, you're putting profits before people. That's when I start getting worried about AI's impact. Do I think we're there yet? No, I don't think we're there yet. But I think there's a reason Congress is looking at this pretty intently, and that's because the potential is there. And, whole industries that we've become reliant upon, not just for the services that they provide, but for the economic stability in a community they offer. If they go away, then all of a sudden we're kind of lost at sea. Forgive the metaphor there, but we need to be careful about what it is that we allow to migrate. And I think Congress is sort of thinking about that broader picture and the economic impact. A lot of people, when you talk to them about AI, the first thing they go to is the Terminator argument. It's going to be sentient. It's going to take over the world.
Yeah.
Well, yes, that is a sort of far-fetched James Cameron-esque version of what could go wrong with AI run amok. But really, I think the change is going to be much more impactful on our everyday lives if we're not careful. So that's kind of where I sit on it right now. And I think the people who are paying attention to it are probably thinking along the same lines. You want to make sure you're preserving a way of life and a certain economic value um, to the communities that you serve. And so Congress, quite rightfully, is serving a whole bunch of communities across the country, and they're seeing the potential impact of this. That's why you're seeing it addressed at the legislative level.
Do you think it would have gotten as much attention if it were not for the Hollywood strike?
Well, that's an interesting question. I know that they were striking because they wanted protections against that sort of thing.
Right.
Um, you know what AI could possibly do to their particular industry, but in my circle, within the group of administrators that first began to address this after the whole Chat GPT story blew up, and that was, I guess, last November when it first. I think the first I heard about it was on NPR. I was listening to Weekend Edition, and they were talking about it on NPR. Um, the things that we're talking about here have to do with, how are we going to integrate it within the academic experience so that students can use AI as a tool to help them be as productive as possible, as creative as possible, not to rely on the computer necessarily or AI necessarily, but to see it as a tool amongst a set of tools in a toolbox.
And,
Um,
and also how to teach more progressively using, right, the application. For illustrators, I'm sure they're nervous because AI is pretty good at generating illustrations, and even based on stories that you might need a photo for. A little scary, and also photography, right?
well, the old analog, back in the day when we moved past daguerreotypes and tintypes, when photography became first commercially viable as an industry where the everyday consumer could go out and buy, a Brownie camera and shoot a roll of film and take it and get it processed, and everybody thought painting is dead. Nobody. Why would we paint anymore since we have this beautiful device that can take photos for us, make pictures for us? And I just think it's another tool. I don't mean to diminish the anxiety that folks have about AI, because I do think there are some real points of anxiety to be considered, but they're mostly economic, as I pointed to before, with this idea of industry replacement. The tool itself, uh, has the potential to create a tremendous opportunity for people who know how to use it. And I just want to make sure that if we're educating students, that we're thinking about how we teach them to be responsible. We teach them to be responsible citizens, and understanding AI is just part of that understanding of their responsibility to their community, to their craft, to their families, etc.
Right, right. Using it as a tool and not a fear tactic.
Right. Exactly. Well said.
It is always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much. Do you have a few other words you would like to tell us in terms of what you're doing now and what we can expect from you soon?
Well, my dear wife and I have just moved back into our home here in San Antonio. When I first came back here to San Antonio College, I had to rent for a while because the house that we owned was being rented out, and so now I'm back. I have finally gotten access to my studio, so I'm hoping that I'll start making artwork in the not too distant future. But yeah, that's next on the horizon for me. I've been blessed with a tremendous opportunity here at San Antonio College. When I first came in as chair of the Fine Arts Department, we had 5 programs under that umbrella, which included speech, visual arts, dance, drama, and music. And since then, we've added 5 more programs, a television station and a radio station, and soon a newspaper. So the program is essentially more than doubled in size, and I'm pretty excited about the opportunity to sort of take some of what I've learned in the past and tweak it a little bit and put it out there in the future, and we'll see what happens. I'm pretty excited about it.
You're a visionary. I'll just put it that way. You're a visionary, and you prepare, I believe, not only the faculty but students for what's next. So I really appreciate an opportunity to work with you and then to interview you and to continue our friendship.
Well, and the conversation will continue. I promise you. I'll keep you up to date on what's going on here, and as long as you promise to do the same for me. I'm really excited to hear about what you do with Black Women in Radio. I've been watching you on social media, very pleased to see all of the engagement that you're having with the audience out there, and it's just tremendous. So keep in touch, okay?
I absolutely will, and thank you again. Kevin Conlon, who is the chair of the art department at San Antonio College.